Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be talking about the bridge collapse that took place in Baltimore and just my perspectives on this. So, before I begin, please make sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I also have a Patreon channel. So please subscribe to all of them. That way you get updates. I have certain sensitive information when I cover certain types of topics that cannot be on YouTube. I will premiere on YouTube, but certain things just can't be left on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe to all my channels. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Also, please follow me on GETTR and Twitter and Facebook. That way you will be able to get the notifications in a timely manner because sometimes the notifications are delayed by YouTube. So with that, let's begin with the Baltimore Bridge collapse. Here's my take on this. All right. The operator for the ship has had a record of having collisions with the Dolly in port. So this is not a one-off, in terms of this operator with this particular ship. It is a one-off in terms of hitting a major bridge and having a collapse, but they've had accidents before. Shipping is a hazardous business. All right. In addition, you have to remember that this bridge was built in the early 1970s, and it took 5 years to build. My understanding is that it started in 1972, and it was opened on 1977. All right, so there was about 5 years of construction of this bridge. If you look at it from a structural engineering point of view, all right, and I used to be an automotive engineer, so I know a whole lot about structure and crash testing. Yeah, that structure is bare bones structure. In addition, the shipping containers and the ships that are on that contain the shipping containers and the ships that are holding the containers have grown in size over the decades. Part of the reason for that is it's more cost effective to ship. Now, if you pay attention to the news, there's an awful lot of actually containers lost at sea during shipment because of the overstacking of these containers. And that insurance for these cargo ships are increasing because of loss of goods at sea. There's the issue with what's going on in the Middle East in terms of attacks by the Houthis, but also weather issues with ships being lost at sea or having cargo being dipped into the ocean because of problematic weather. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is just that it's become more cost effective to overload the ships. All right. So the bridge design was bare bones design, and it didn't really have a really good bumper system or a buffer system around its 2 major support pillars. And as the decades have increased, have gone by, the actual mass of the ships, because of the cargo that they're holding, has increased. So even if you have a ship that's going at, let's say, 5 knots, the mass of these ships are much more than they were back in the early 70s. So the momentum is much greater than they were during the early, whiteboard designs. It wasn't even a whiteboard back then. It was just a drawing board. But the point is that the actual bridge was not really designed to be hit by such a massive force. Okay, so keep that in mind. Is that the bridge back in the 1970s didn't have adequate bumper system and adequate buffering system around its two major pillars, support pillars, for a collision of such a massive size cargo ship. The way that bridge was designed, it was, smaller cargo ships. All right. Now, I see ships all the time because I live in New York. So, you see ships, going up and down the East River or the Hudson or, in the Bay Area. And, there's ports around New Jersey and whatnot. But looking at that bridge, it was designed for really a cargo ship that had less mass. Now, let's get into the details of the the ship. But before we go into the details, let's just make another point. There just was, they probably had cost cutting at that time for this bridge. And it didn't have I wouldn't say that it had an adequate redundancy around its pillars, around the pillar at the water level, but also you can see that there's a fulcrum point up at the top of the pillar. So if there was a collision and something happened to the actual roadside part of the bridge, then the weight could easily rotate around that fulcrum. So I just think that it was adequate to hold 18-wheeler cargo and passenger car weights, and high enough to let cargo ships to go underneath the bridge, but there just wasn't adequate robustness around the fulcrum and a safety feature around the pillars, for a bumper system, especially when you're talking about the momentums that we're dealing with these new these more modern cargo ships. So just keep that in mind. The assumptions of the size of the ships have changed over the decades. The amount of trade that is going in and out of these ports have increased. So the more trade you have and the larger the ships that are carrying this cargo, or they're carrying more cargo, heavier cargo, it gets to the point where you're increasing the probability of a black swan. All right. And we've been hearing these terms, black swan, in the news recently. Well, black swans do happen, especially when you have, higher probabilities of something happening because you have more trade and you have larger momentum with these ships, on top of probably the inadequacy of safety features with that bridge, probably because of cost cutting. If you look at bridges that were being designed in the 70s, maybe even in the 80s, it was more stripped down, comparing it to, let's say, the robustness of the pillar system on the Brooklyn Bridge, which was designed in the late 1800s. So that you can see that there's a much difference in robustness of the pillar structure, the major support structures. So that's one thing. So I think that there was too parsimonious of a design for cost cutting. And then you add into the probability of a potential accident happening because of the larger mass ships, holding their cargo, and the increased trade with the ports. So this sort of thing is going to happen. Now, the reports are, now let's get to the details of the reports. The reports are is that they lost power to the ability to steer. Now, there's a current that's going down these rivers. All right, even when you have a large ship, these currents are pretty powerful. And so there's a lot of people that are putting in their 2 cents, and they probably never steered even a little dinghy, So most people have not steered a large ship, right? But the point here is that there's this momentum of the ship, the loss of the steering, and the current. All right. These are all very, very large forces. This current and the momentum of the ship are very large forces that I don't think most people have their mind wrapped around, because they don't deal with these kinds of forces on a daily basis. So with that, even though that the ship was somewhat moving slowly, you had these, stronger currents to push the ship, but not just that. You had this momentum because of this large mass that's on the ship because it was fully loaded. So okay, so you have this issue that's happening. They lose the steering, and then they they go to auxiliary power. It's my understanding, and there's a smoke that's coming from the auxiliary power. And then they hit this the Achilles heel of the bridge. My take on this is that this was an accident. The operator had a history of having problems docking ships, in other countries, because this is not just a ship that just stays in the United States, but it goes to, I believe there was a Belgium accident with this Dolly ship. So there's a history of the operator having some collisions. And, if you have a major port, we don't really have redundancy, because it's just not as cost effective. And this is something that we probably need to learn from the last crisis that we went through in 2020 is that our supply chain can be easily disrupted because of lack of redundancy. Everything is just in time, and it's parsimonious to try to keep costs down. Well, go back to the design of the bridge. It was a parsimonious design, and therefore there wasn't enough robustness to be able to accommodate a future event, and therefore we have this accident that's happened. So I think a big lesson learned here is that you can have a black swan event that happens that is not nefarious, that happens just through randomness, and unfortunately people died from it. But the lesson learned is to build redundancy in our supply chain and to be more robust with our infrastructure. You look at old bridges versus the bridges that we are designing today, and they're not as robust. You look at the buildings that are being built up in Manhattan that are skyscrapers. They don't have the same robustness as, let's say, the Rockefeller Center, or let's say the Chrysler building. So they're cheaper to make, they're faster to make, for today's architecture, but it's not as robust. The mason work is not there. It's all steel and glass, and maybe there's a better energy coefficient. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that for a little while. There's probably ways to make it more efficient compared to the older style, but I think that is just to bring down cost and to increase the speed of building, of raising the building up. But that's one big lesson learned is that we need some sort of redundancy and more robustness in the structures we build and in the systems, these supply chain management systems that we have developed across the world. I think that's a big lesson learned here. So, I see this as not some sort of nefarious thing that took place, but just, we literally have 5 decades difference between the design of that bridge and, modern commerce. And we have an age, and on top of it, we also have an aging infrastructure in the United States because of poor funding and planning for the future. These are more important to really focus on than some sort of conspiracy theory on that it was some sort of it was done on purpose. It's an important port, and important ports have a lot of activity. Well, if you have a lot of activity, you probably are going to have a higher probability of an incident. So that would help explain that. Now, these sorts of things happen, especially when there's not redundancy. And I think if you analyze, if someone took and analyzed the actual currents of that river, you'll kind of realize that when you're getting underneath those bridges, that there's a turbulence that kind of sucks. There's a turbulence, and I think that it kind of sucks things towards the pillar. And I think that's part of the reason why there was this hard pull to it. You kind of see it when you look under bridges, like in the East River or even on the Hudson, where you look by the pillars and you can see this turbulence that's taking place just underneath the bridge. So people need to understand that as the water is cutting through those pillars that are underneath the water, it's causing kind of like a riptide effect, which I have not heard anybody talk about. So keep that in mind. But this event, even though probably it wasn't done on purpose. I can't prove that, but nobody can prove that it was done on purpose. So I just, you mean revert to what can you prove? And it just seems more rational that this was by accident, but an accident could cause problems. All right. Obviously, it caused problems for the construction workers that were on the bridge, and and they have died from this incident. It's problematic for the commuters, so they have to change their route. It's problematic for the trucks that go over that are shipping goods, and so now they have to reroute their normal route, and those goods are probably going to be more expensive and probably they're at least in the short term be delayed. Now, the long term, well, even in the short term here, to medium term, it's going to take some time to get the steel and some of the cargo out of the river. All right. Now, that they can do it because they have cranes that can be attached to barges, right? And they can lift this stuff up. So this is not like, something that is super problematic, but it'll take a little bit of time. I suspect that this will take less than 1 month to clean up if they really go 24/7 on this. But if they drag their feet, then it may be a couple months. But this is something that shipping way should be clear within 4 weeks. And then you have goods and services going to port again. In the meantime, those ships aren't going to be able to go through that waterway, and we'll have to reroute to other places on the East Coast and unload or load their cargo at a different port. That would mean that at least in the short term, that there needs to be rerouting of truckers to be able to pick up or drop off certain goods at a different port. So in the short term, there may be problems with certain types of goods that are probably going to be regional. I don't think this is going to be a problem that's going to be all across the United States, because we have lots of different ports, and this is probably more of a regional issue, East Coast regional issue. And I don't think that this is going to be super problematic, because once you get the steel out of the way and the dumped cargo boxes out of the way, then the ships can come back in and do their normal docking. The problem is the commuters and the trucks will be rerouted for the next 5 years, maybe 3 years, depending on how fast they can rebuild the bridge. Some people say 5, some people say that it's a lot quicker to make a bridge like that now and make it more robust, and you probably can do it in 3 years. But for the commuters and for the truckers going over that bridge on a regular basis, they have, a 5-year problem for rerouting. But the system will adapt, right? And there's just a disruption in the short term. If you look at the human body for a moment here, and sometimes you can have blockage in blood flow, and then you have a rerouting of blood that so you have some sort of shunting that takes place. And the human body at times, not always, but at times, can reroute the blood. All right. And there is, in certain areas of tissues, there's angiogenesis. There's this, new blood flow, new vascular system that starts to develop because of the pressures are increased. And, there's a signaling effect that over time will allow for angiogenesis. This is something similar, where you have an occlusion in the supply chain. You have an occlusion in the shipping lanes, and you're seeing a complex system, a social system, adapting and doing almost like a neo-angiogenesis. So, keep that in mind, that it will be some short-term disruptions. It's probably going to be local. I haven't seen major shifts in commodity prices with this event, and that's probably a strong indicator to determine if this is going to be more severe or not. And I don't see that. So that's my take. It was on accident. There wasn't some sort of nefarious actor on the boat or some sort of hacking or anything like that. I don't believe that for a second. There is no evidence of that. And people need to, just spend some time underneath watch a bridge, especially where there is some serious current that's going on, and a lot of activity going up and down the river system. And then you'll start to realize that there are riptides that are underneath that are by these bridge pillars. And if you have a boat that has lost steering, you could easily understand on how this thing could have been circled into the pillar. um, uh, pretty quickly, because the force of water is extremely powerful. And I think humans don't fully understand how powerful the force of water is. Um, Unless, you've been actually, through a hurricane, or, through typhoon, or have seen a tsunami or something like that. The power of water is very, very strong. Um, and, the understanding that a boat that has a lot of mass, even going slow, is going to have a lot of momentum. And that bridge was not designed to be hit, have a direct hit on the pillar with that much mass. So that's my take on it. But there is going to be the realization that our infrastructure is aging, and our infrastructure doesn't have the redundancy that it should have, and the robustness that it should have. So just kind of take that in mind, just how you apply things to your own life. Do you have redundancy in certain things, for a backup? And, is your life robust enough so a fragile event can be absorbed, you know? So that's my take on it. I don't think that this is some sort of foreign actor, trying to knock out our grid, and that it was some sort of cyber attack. I believe that Laura, was it Laura? Laura, I can't remember her first name, or her last name. She was on Bannon's show, and she was saying that this was some sort of cyber attack and all this. There is no evidence of that. Um, that's speculation, you know. But here's another thought for you to think about. There's a randomness that took place. The way I think this happened is this was a black swan random event that could have ramifications economically in the short term, and could have some ramifications in terms of funding infrastructure in the long term in the United States. Uh, but there's also this idea that there could have been a metaphysical component to this. There's an awful lot of things that we have been starting to see in the world since December 1st, 2023, that's been happening, that if you're on the wrong side of the metaphysics of what's going on in the Middle East, that bad things are probably going to be happening to the country, that those policies are not congruent with what's going on with what Israel is doing with Gaza. And that there is this curse that I've been talking about, that if you're not on the right side of the metaphysics, you're going to get a curse. And if you are on the right side, you'll get a blessing. And that with the bridge being the Francis Scott Key's bridge, and that it was about 47 years old, just a little bit more than 47 years by about 3 days or so. That there is kind of some sort of esoteric meaning that's going on here, and that we may actually be hinted that the fall of the American empire is starting to happen, and that our dominancy in the world is starting to unravel because of some of the metaphysical policies that we've been doing domestically and internationally. So keep that in mind, that I think it's more probable that it was randomness with a metaphysical hand to try for us to snap back to some sort of conservatism, versus some sort of cyber attack that happened, that that can't be, that doesn't, there's no evidence of that. But maybe new data comes out that proves that it was a cyber attack. I don't know. I'm a person that is open-minded to new data. But usually, when I look at something of this complexity, I'm usually right. Now, my point here is you can see these events starting to play out since October 7th of 2023, where societies are being cursed and societies are being blessed. And it probably behooves us to be more conservative and stop being so woke and stop being so ultra liberal in this country, or we are going to lose our nation. With that, that's my take on what happened on the bridge. And some people have shown some sort of flares or some sort of lights kind of like an explosive light that was taking place as the bridge was starting to fall. It looks to me from those pictures or that video that it's the snapping of the electrical cables. You got to remember, these cables that are up there, they are extremely thick, and there's going to be a major electrical arc when they snap. So, if you don't believe me, go take a look at a bridge, that is, somewhat of robustness, and, just look at the architecture of it, the support structure, and the electrical system on it, and you'll understand and know what I'm talking about. So, with that said, please make sure that you go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the supplements that I offer. I have a lot of different supplements that will help to boost up your immune system. I have structural nanosilver liquids and gels that will help to neutralize pathogens and boost up your immune system. I have the C60 and avocado and coconut oil in 2-ounce, 4-ounce, and an 8-ounce configuration. That will bring down free radicals, that will reduce the stress on the cells and help with the immune system, and bring down those free radicals and improve your mitochondrial health. And I have a plethora of supplements that help boost up your immune system, reduce cardiovascular disease, increase the electron transport chain, and bring down inflammation and boost up your immune system. For example, taking ashwagandha and turmeric will bring down that inflammatory response and help to improve your immune system. The ashwagandha brings down the blood glucose levels, so you don't have an inflamed cardiovascular system. And the turmeric will bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines. So, please take my advice and go to my store and get the different supplements like B complex that helps with the electron transport chain, and omega-3 that helps with your lipid profile to reduce cardiovascular disease. If you follow what I have to say about how to mix these different supplements, you're going to improve your health. And you're helping to support my work to be able to give you a different perspective. Like Alex Jones, it's the end of the world when when this bridge is collapsing, and it's going to be some sort of major event, and it's not. This is actually an accident. What is the major event, Alex, is that the American public are too ultra liberal, and that we're going to lose our country because there is going to be a curse on the country, because we are losing the foundations of what made this country great, and that is self-determination and the rule of the rule of law through the Constitution. That is where the ball is, not a riptide that pushed, that helped guide the boat into the pillar. So thank you for listening, and please have a nice day.